Hey guys, and welcome to our first video on the forking guide to chess openings. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how to play one of my favorite openings for white, which is the 4-knight Scotch. And if you have been playing chess for some time, you have probably heard about the PogChamps. PogChamps is a tournament that is played by famous streamers, Twitch streamers, and they play chess. The idea was to popularize the game to the newer generation, and it was a huge success, of course. And in this tournament, one of the famous grandmasters, Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, was coaching one of the players, and he taught this opening that I believe to be one of the the easiest openings to play as white if you're just starting out. So this opening is great for beginners if you are just starting out, because you don't have to memorize so many lines. The lines are very intuitive. The moves comes very naturally. So I'm going to show you some of the most common lines and variations for this opening, and so you can start playing it yourself. So here I have the chess.com analysis board on, so we can take a look at the moves. And of course, this opening starts with pawn to e4, which is the first move for white. It's very hard for black to avoid this opening because if they play the move e5, you're just going to play your knight out. And whether your opponent plays the classic approach or the Petrov's defense, the Russian game, you are going to do the same thing. You're going to develop your knight, and you're going to have the same opening with the 4 knights out. You have your 2 knights, your opponent have their 2 knights here, and that's why it's called 4 knights. But we're going to play a very specific variation of this opening. It's not the Italian or the Spanish variation, it's the Scotch variation of the 4 knights defense. So here, we're going to put our knight out, opponent's going to do the same thing, and then we're going to place our knight there. From here on, more often than not, opponent's going to play the knight here, but they can also play this move, bishop to c5. And if they do this, we have a very interesting variation. I'm not going to go through all the moves here, but you can strike with this knight taking here in the center of the board. And your opponent is probably going to do this. They're going to recapture. And as they do that, you just push this pawn to the center, creating what we call a fork. And believe it or not, this fork is very common, actually. So let me follow with the moves here. Knight takes the knight, and then you push the pawn to the center of the board, forking bishop and knight. Black is probably going to take. The best option here is to just go back, and as you capture, they recapture with the bishop, keeping the bishop pair. But it's very common for black to just take your pawn with the bishop, in which case you're just going to recapture with the queen, having this very good centralized queen. The knight's not here to harass the queen anymore. So the most common moves here are to just defend the knight that's being attacked. You can continue by just developing your pieces naturally and trying to castle. You can castle long here, for example. It's fairly easy to play. So if we move here, we can see that the moves are very easy. Knight can be developed by the black pieces. You can castle long. Black is going to castle short too. And you can keep developing your pieces. I'm not going to go through the whole variation here. We have many moves that we can go through. I'm going to focus on the main lines here. So if we go back here to this point where black can play the knight here or bishop, the most common move is to just move the knight. So if they go for the knight, you're just going to strike at the center of the board with the move d4. And here we have the 4-knight Scotch. This is basically the starting position of the opening. Black, more often than not, is going to take the pawn. You're going to recapture with your knight. And believe it or not, according to the databases, especially for amateurs, the most common move here is knight takes knight, which is not really good, So if the knight takes here, you can simply recapture with the queen, and you have a really good game, easy to play. You can develop your bishop, castle long. It's fairly easy to move on from here. Okay, so knight takes knight, queen takes. Black's gonna try to open up some lines there, moving the bishop. You can do the same thing, right? Develop your pieces, castle long, and you have a great game of chess here. Another move that it's very common here in this position, instead of knight takes, right? Let me just go back some moves. Not, yeah, in this position, instead of black actually capturing here, the most challenging moves are bishop here or here. Okay, this one being the most annoying, in my opinion. So let's imagine that black plays the bishop. Okay, let's try to see the bishop to c5 first, which is not so hard to play against. We can play this move, bishop to e3 here, setting a little trap, you know, just in case black is not careful. If they, for example, castle here, you can go ahead and take the knight. And when you do that, you are attacking the queen up here. So they have to recapture your knight so you can capture this bishop and you're basically up a piece. So they take, you take the bishop and you're up a piece. You can retreat and continue developing here. You're just winning this game. You just trade down the pieces and simplify to an end game. This is fairly good for white. Another situation here, and this move is not bad, you know, if it doesn't work, if the trap doesn't work, let's say, this is indeed a good move in any case. So they can capture here, you can recapture, and play a really good game. You can castle very quickly, develop your bishop, you know, a very easy game to play here. You can see the moves are simple. But the most common move here is actually bishop to b4. This is the most complicated line because the bishop here is pinning the knight. So you have to react against this. They're threatening to take this pawn. This knight is also under attack. So you have to release some pressure here. And the best move is to just take the knight up there to release the pressure. And then now you need to defend this pawn. Remember, this knight is pinned by the bishop. So you have to come here and defend it. The best way to do that, the easiest way to do that, is to just bring the bishop out. This way you develop a piece and protect the pawn in the center of the board. Okay, black is going to move the pawn. You trade, and you can safely castle here. Black is probably going to do the same thing. And from here on, you have a bunch of options. A lot of people like to go bishop out, queen here, reroute this knight somewhere around here or here. Put the rooks to the center of the board. But you can see that the moves are very intuitive. The lines are very open. Sometimes black is going to try to trade this knight. You can just recapture. It's not a big deal. Here I like to go queen here or bishop here first. But you can study the most common moves. That's how we learn openings, right? One thing that I really recommend is looking to some databases like Chess 365 or the Lichess database. So you can see what is the most common continuation after a certain position is reached. In this case here, probably the most common continuations are bishop out and queen here. So you can go ahead and study which one you think is the most interesting for you. Let's say you play the bishop here, pinning the knight. They defend the pawn in the center of the board by placing this pawn right here. You can go ahead and put your queen there, and the moves are fairly simple. Here, basically, we're just playing chess, right? We're avoiding any kind of infiltrations by playing h3. You can put your rooks to the center. You can reroute your knight, try to bring it to the game. It's a very simple opening that you can play, and you don't have to memorize many lines, right? So just going to the start of the position, you just have to remember you're going to develop your pawn, your knights, then you're going to strike the center of the board with your two pawns. If they trade, you're going to recapture with your knight, and you're going to have open lines for your bishops, right? It's very easy to castle short or long. It's up for choice. It's a very easy opening to play as white if you're just starting out. I like playing this opening a lot, and I've had some great results with it. And recommendation from GM Daniel Naroditsky, right? What can you say? So that's it for the first video, guys. This is the first video of the series, the forking guide to chess openings. And stay tuned for more videos. I see you guys in the next one.